there a protected right to be racist in the UK? The answer might surprise you. Let's get into it. So I'm doing this topic because my Twitter feed, as with most people's Twitter feeds nowadays, is constantly flooded with right-wing content. Thank you, Elon Musk. And this lady you can see behind me, Lucy Connolly, came up on my timeline. There's been a lot of conversation about her. I actually saw a post that says apparently Trump was sending some crack team of, I don't know, free speech lawyers or whatever to come to the UK and talk to Keir Starmer about why she's still in prison. Okay, fair enough. Trump's credentials on free speech are not exactly the most the most solid themselves, but that's not what this conversation is about. But essentially, I looked into the case of Lucy Connolly, and she's actually one of the ladies that, one of the people that made tweets last year when we had the riots about asylum seekers and them being in hotels and stuff. When we had that whole saga and people were saying really racist and offensive things about asylum seekers and talking about burning down, the hotels and things like that. And she was one of the people that made a post similar to that. She actually deleted the post 3 hours later, but clearly that wasn't fast enough for the internet detectives, and she was arrested for the tweet, and they charged her with inciting racial hatred. Now, I'm not going to get into that law too specifically because around that time I actually did a video on that specific law, the Public Order Act of 1986, and how circular its definition of race was. You can see it behind me here. It defines racial group as a race, which again is a circular definition, but it also makes nationality a race, which means, if two black people are from different countries, the whole definition doesn't make sense because a white South African and a black South African are both South Africans. They still don't belong to the same race as you would think of in the, general understanding of race. Again, that's not what this is about. Putting that aside, I decided to do some digging into, what the latest is, and she's been sentenced to 31 months, which she appealed, but the judge was like, nah, you're serving your full term. And so the right-wing conversation about her has been trying to make her out to be a free speech martyr in terms of, this punishment does not fit the crime, and 31 months for this kind of tweet is kind of crazy, which I actually do agree with. But we'll get into more specifically why I agree with that in a bit. What I wanted to talk about was, I said earlier about the question, do we have a right to be racist? And in the BBC article about Lucy Connolly's sentencing and the kind of back and forth around her, an activist, Dr. Shola, she's Nigerian and I still can't pronounce her second name. Kind of bad of me, to be honest, but you see her around a lot, doing the Lord's work, very nice stuff. She said in response to the BBC article when she was contacted for comment that people that are making Lucy Connolly to be a free speech champion are just advocating for the right to be racist, which led me to actually wonder, do we actually have the right to be racist in the UK? Because the Americans do, First Amendment wise. Well, we'll see what Trump's going to do to the First Amendment by the time he's done with it when it comes to Israel. But if you look at the Public Order Act, I've highlighted in yellow what it says there, which is like, if you are arrested for inciting racial hatred, which is what she was arrested for, it's basically a defense for you to say, I was only being racist in my house, a dwelling, and I was only saying racist stuff to the people in that house, and I didn't know that it was actually going to go out to other people. So yeah, I guess by that narrow definition, you do have a right. Obviously, doesn't mean it's going to save you from your job and other things like that if the video was to leak. But, legally speaking, that would be a good defense for you. So technically, yes, I'm actually surprised that we do have a right to be racist in the UK because our free speech laws are actually quite restrictive. But coming back to this lady specifically and my view on the sentence, I don't agree with it because when it comes to free speech, we do have to be quite careful. I talk about this topic quite a bit. If you've been following me for a while, every so often I do a topic on free speech. This is not obviously about Lucy Connolly specifically, even though, to be fair, she's a mother and has children and stuff like that, which I'm surprised they didn't factor into the sentencing too much. It probably hurt her case that she's actually married, and so I guess the judge was like, your husband can look after the kids, so you don't need to do that. Kind of harsh, but fair enough. But what we're seeing nowadays, especially the free speech battle of our time, is Israel-Palestine. And I'm under no illusion that if she had made that tweet about bombing a synagogue, all these free speech frauds would not be defending her, even though consistent with their principles they should be. But what we're seeing right now is that a lot of people that are making, anti-Palestinian, anti-Zionist activism, they're being mercilessly attacked. We saw the story of the lady that had the coconut at the protest. That was like a pregnant woman, and she was arrested for that. We're seeing Jewish people, being arrested for anti-Semitism. That's the kind of level of madness we have. Holocaust survivors being arrested for apparently being anti-Semitic. You know, that's the level of madness we're getting to. And so when it comes to free speech, we have to be very, very careful because, you know, free speech and the defense of free speech, it always feels very knee-jerk, especially when you're a young person and, you know, we believe in, like, everyone should be getting along, no one should be, you know, having harmful, hateful views. But that's a very, you know, wonderful ideal. But free speech, when it comes to attacking free speech, it's always about the speech you don't like. You know, the point of a principle is that it's consistent. And so, like, we have a right to a free trial. It doesn't matter if, you know, 100 people saw you do the crime right there. If there's video footage, there's, you know, it's in 4K. The right to a free trial is a right to a free trial. Everyone has that as standard. I think when it comes to free speech, it's very important that it's not only for speech that you like, it's also for speech you don't like. That's kind of how it goes. The principles must be applied consistently. And so, as much as I don't agree with what she said, I can't in good conscience say, yes, I support her being sentenced. And, you know, people like Dr. Schuller saying, oh, we just want a right to be racist. People do have to have a right to be racist. Because what we're seeing now is that everyone being accused of anti-Semitism for even saying, I support the lives of Palestinians. Netanyahu came out and said, I think a few days ago, that saying free Palestine is the same as saying Hail Hitler. That's the level of people who are willing to go to basically try and claim racism. So imagine a world where we do say, yes, people should be punished even more harshly for, you know, saying things that other people would deem to be racist. How do you think that's going to be used against people that are advocating for, you know, an end to the subjugation of the Palestinian people? There's so many things that we advocate for, we on the left, or, you know, I'm nominally on the left, but a lot of virtuous things that some people in some form or another could consider to be offensive, racist, etc., etc. Unfortunately, we just have to live in a society where we have to allow those people to say what they want to say. Obviously, if you're getting to the point of, like, you're saying, go and kill this person because they're whatever, that's obviously different. But basically, anything between those lines, we have to think very carefully about, just kind of saying that's just part of being in a free society. People are just going to sometimes do stuff that you don't agree with. It would be nice for me to have police working with me everywhere I go, because someone might or may not want to harm me, but I also want my privacy. So I would say it's a trade-off for me to have my privacy in exchange for, yes, if someone came up to me and, God forbid, harmed me, the police will not be right there next to me. They might be 20, 30 minutes away, but I'm willing to trade that off because I'd rather not have them following me everywhere I go. That's the kind of analogy I think when it comes to free speech. And so I do disagree with the sentencing of this lady. I'm not going to make her a free speech champion or whatever, but, you know, it is harsh what they've done to her. And again, I should point out, the law itself doesn't actually make much sense. But, you know, there we have it. Just a little update for you guys. Hopefully you found that informative. Again, if your aunties or your parents are sharing this conversation in a WhatsApp group, do send them my video. Hopefully they find that entertaining. It's nice to see a friendly face. If they're black, if they're white, I don't know. I still appear to be a friendly face regardless. So enjoy the video, and I'll speak to you guys next time.